All right, everybody, we made it. It's Friday. It's Friday. Happy Friday, everybody. Obviously, you got July 4th off, so 4-day week. But if you had to go back to work today, well, the solace is it's Friday. So happy Friday, everybody here. Welcome to the Southside Beat here on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network YouTube channel. My name is Chris Halicke. Some news that I'll share at the end of the show, both show related and personal news, good news, but I'll wait until the end of the show. But also some news with the show as well, just to kind of give you guys some updates. So to start things off, just wanted to really take advantage of the time that we have together and kind of turn the show over to you guys. John, welcome. Appreciate it. Member for 12 months. Happy 1 year here. Appreciate that, John. But want to hand the show over to you guys. Barber, no hat. Chris got the haircut yesterday. Took a shower not long ago. Beard's nice and fluffy right before I trim it. It needs to be trimmed. It's a little long, but not taking advantage of the haircut and but really just want to turn the show over to you guys today. Bring your questions. I'll try to give you answers. Maybe my opinion on some things for what that's worth. But definitely want to turn it over to you guys. So bring your questions. Less than 3 weeks to training camp, man. Less than 3 weeks. It's awesome. Awesome stuff. Excited to finally be up there. And okay, well, Robert is jumping the gun on the news that I have on show related news. Robert asks, when will Greg McAfee come on this podcast? And he asks it in all caps. So I read that as you were screaming for Greg to be on the show. And so that's the show news. Greg will be joining the show as a co-host here next week. Beginning with the Monday show. He'll talk with him earlier today. First week on the job, there's a lot to learn when it comes to how, we obviously, have a system we work through, learning, the way that we do things with the company, because that's, we want to get your feet underneath you before you can really start to run. And that's the best way to do it. We didn't want to throw everything on Greg right away, because the most important thing is make sure that by the time training camp comes around, he's not having to think about style or how to do certain things with the system that we use or anything like that. It's just, we want to be able to focus on work. And so first week didn't want to also throw, becoming co-host of a podcast on top of that. So, but Greg will be joining the show next week. Greg's a great dude. Had a lot of good talks with him so far, and definitely excited to have him on here. That doesn't mean we can't have guys such as Matt Williamson on the show every now and then. I also have certain plans for the show during the season to bring you guys some actual Southside content here on the show. That's about the most I can probably tease it, because a lot of it is very still just rough ideas, brainstorming. So, but yes, that is the news with the show. Is Greg will be coming on here as co-host next week. Excited for that. To get to some Steelers questions. Barber asked a good question. How long will it take for cohesion with the offensive line in your estimation? It's a good question, because I'm my offensive line preview will be coming out very shortly after this podcast ends today. It is already written and pretty much ready to go. All I've got to do is hit the publish button, and it's good to go. So it's a question I kind of pose with that offensive line preview, and the best answer I can give you right now is we'll see. It's so difficult to try to predict something like that, because we saw what happened in 2022. Okay, 2022, you have two new members. You have brought in Mason Cole, James Daniels. there's some shuffling going on, and also some differences with the system. In 2022, they shifted to more outside zone, and so when that happened, that's going to take time, and we saw that. Now, in the 23 season last year, they changed only one guy on the starting five, and that was really upgrading from what Dotson was doing in Pittsburgh, upgrading from Kevin Dotson to Isaac Seumalo. Now, obviously, Kevin Dotson fit like a glove in Sean McVay's switch to more gap-oriented concepts and became a very, very good guard in LA. Doesn't mean that it was a bad move for the Steelers. Isaac Seumalo was fantastic last year for Pittsburgh. So, but that took time, and that was just replacing one guy, and it took them a while to gel. The zone blocking was not good early on. Now, part of that I do kind of put on the offensive coordinator, and I don't want to go too far into the details because I tried to explain some of it in there. Part of that is on the offensive coordinator, and I know that a lot of fans immediately like to point their finger at the offensive line coach, but a lot of the details in the offense, or pretty much the details of how each play, each concept is coached, starts from the top and goes down. And that really begins with the offensive coordinator, how those things are coached when it comes to assignments and how to get to certain reach blocks and everything like that. Like that is that stuff can be overlooked. And I think having Arthur Smith, having a better offensive coordinator who has had a lot of success in this league as a coordinator, with those two offenses in Tennessee, you trust him to be able to coach up those details a little bit better, right? But at the same time, whenever it happens, it's from left to right, Broderick Jones, Isaac Seumalo, Zach Frazier, James Daniels, and Troy Fautanu. Two of those guys have never played in the NFL. They're rookies. And one of those guys has less than a season of being a starter. It's going to take time. You just hope that some of the other things that with the offense can help kind of make up for that while the offensive line continues to. And that's why I'm advocating for just put the young guys all out there right away. Obviously, if they suck in training camp and they're terrible in the preseason, that changes everything. But if those guys look like they look the part and look like they can play, just put them out there. Just let that chemistry start off right away. This is a long answer to the first question, but it's a we'll see. Hopefully it doesn't take too long, because the longer it takes, the worse it's going to be for the team. Charlie asks, what is your overall vibe of the fan base this season? Optimistic, or is everyone expecting more of the same? For the fan base, it's hard to say, because man. And like, I would say some are optimistic. The roster looks better on paper than it did last year. But the schedule's more tough. And you still have some fans that feel like the quarterback overhaul was ultimately a downgrade, whether they're a Kenny Pickett fan or whatever the reason is, or they really just don't like Russell Wilson and they really don't like Justin Fields and his 41 turnovers in 3 seasons. Like, whatever the reason is, like, some people don't like the quarterback room now compared to, they just really wanted Mason Rudolph and they didn't get him. So they're mad, and whatever the reason is. So I would say it's hard to put my finger on that. It's hard to put my finger on it, to be completely honest. Yeah. And Barber makes up a good point, by the way, with Arthur Smith. He says, don't forget that Smith is an O-lineman at heart. Yeah, like Arthur Smith is, I just trust him to get those things worked out up front better. Yeah, sorry, I got a hair in my eye. Slanak says, I expect more of the same, but winning in this division is very difficult right now. There's no doubt about that. No doubt. The division is stacked. The AFC itself is stacked, but especially the AFC North. The Ravens, to me, are the team to beat. And they're the team to beat as long as Lamar Jackson plays at the level that he played at last year. Getting Derrick Henry should help their running game. They still have some questions on the defensive side, in my opinion, but it's still a good defense. It's not like, oh, well, it's one of those down. Like, no, they still got players. They can still, they're the team to beat in the division, in my opinion. Joe Burrow, when he's healthy and everything, you have to respect him as one of the best quarterbacks in the league. But Cincinnati has other issues on the roster that make me think they're at least beatable. Like the Steelers can at least split games with them at the very minimum. And obviously the Steelers swept that series last year. But if Joe Burrow is healthy, can't count on that to happen, because remember, the Steelers didn't face Joe Burrow last year. So, and the last time they did play Joe Burrow twice in the same season, they at least split it. That was in 22. And really, the only reason that they won in Cincinnati was because the defense and really Minkah Fitzpatrick just took over. The defense was the reason why they won that game. And then the Browns, man, like the Browns are just as much as people don't like to say it in Pittsburgh, they're just a good football team. It's a good roster. The defense is one of the best in the league. Nick Chubb will be back. He's one of the best running backs in the league. Their offensive line is so good. Question their receivers a bit. And honestly, probably their biggest question is Deshaun Watson. If I'm being completely honest, Deshaun Watson is probably the biggest question. And if he's adequate, this is still a team that can win 10 or 11 games. It just is. I mean, think of what they did last year and not having Nick Chubb for vast majority of the season. The Browns are a very good football team. As much as it pains Steelers fans to hear that, I'm calling it like it is. This isn't me joining some sort of bandwagon or trying to be like anti-Steeler. This is nothing to do with pushing agendas of any kind. I call it like I see it. The Browns are a good football team. Would not surprise me at all if they finish second in the division. And really, if I'm giving odds, I would actually put the Browns as probably the second favorite to win the division based off of what I see now. But realistically, any of these four teams can win the division, because all it takes is getting a little bit of luck with health. Man, it's a tough division. It's a division in which each team has a legitimate case to win the division. Like, you can make an argument for any of those teams to win. Real. I like it's not hyperbole. It's the best division in football, and it's not even close. It's the best division in football. So, and I would like the Steelers' chances if the quarterback play is average, or I would even say if it's good. If Russell Wilson and or Justin Fields are good this year, not great, not elite, not Patrick Mahomes level, but good, and they can stay healthy on the defensive side of the ball, I like their chances. I don't know about winning the division, but making the playoffs, even with that schedule, this is a good team. I think it's a good team. I just don't know with how good the division is, how good the AFC is. You know, I was saying the same thing last year. There's going to be a team that wins 10 games that doesn't make it. And the Steelers could very well be that team this year. They could go 10-7 again, which with that schedule, you'd probably take. You'd probably take 10-7, and 10-7 might not be good enough. Just very, very possible. It's a crap year for the team in terms of a schedule. Maybe things will be different the next year. I don't know. I don't remember what divisions they'll be playing. I'd have to go through and remember like what divisions they play each year. Go through, and Joshua Dobbs here says that with quarterback play. Give me Russ's numbers he had last year, and we're doing cartwheels. Absolutely. 26 touchdowns to 8 picks. Take that in a heartbeat. Take that in a heartbeat, man. I mean, yeah. Barber says that hurts my heart to hear that. I'm assuming that means hearing that the Browns are a good football team. They just are. They are. And Travis says, if we beat the Chiefs on Christmas Day, I'm a believer in winning the playoffs this year. The one pushback I'd say against that is that it's a 4-day week for both teams, and the Chiefs are the team going on the road. So it's one of those things where it's kind of like anything can happen. That game is probably a little bit different if it's just a typical Sunday to Sunday. Even if the Chiefs have to go on the road. If they get Sunday to Sunday, they get a full week of prep. It's a little bit different when it's that short week for both teams. So it's just, I think if they can get through that 3-game stretch of at Philly, at Baltimore 6 days later, and then 4 days later against the Chiefs, and they can win 2 of 3, that to me is like, okay, that's legit. Even if they win 1 of those 3, you kind of like, okay, we at least salvaged a win out of that. Because everybody knows how bad the Steelers play in Philly. They just play terrible there for whatever reason. I don't know if there's something in the water. Probably is. Philly's gross. But they don't play well in Philly. And then they have to go to Baltimore 6 days later. They can win in Baltimore, sure. But then 4 days after that, after they play the Ravens, which, on the road, and that's the most physical game of the year, they have to play Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. Doesn't care where it is. You got to play Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. And it's going to be the Sierra versus Taylor Swift Bowl. Yeah, I don't know. I think if they win 1 of those 3, you kind of just tip your cap and you just say thank you. Thank you for the dub and just move on. You win 2 of 3, that's when you're doing cartwheels. You win 2 of those 3 games, that's yeah. Travis says, looking at the current $15 million in cap space, if we roll that over, would we would, I believe, be at $92.2 million going into next year, enough to cover re-signings for guys next year. I mean, it all depends on what happens with the quarterback position. That is the ultimate X factor when it comes to cap space next year. It depends on actually, the first thing that needs to decide that is, do the Steelers trade for a Brandon Ayuk or even Deebo Samuel or any of those other guys? Because that will require, especially if it's Brandon Ayuk, that'll require a hefty contract that'll kick in the following year. Yeah. But quarterback really is, because whether it's Wilson or Fields, it's going to require money, and it's the most important position on the field. They have to take care of that. And best case scenario really is if Fields is the guy, because you can commit to him long term. But if either one of them work, if Wilson taps into a fountain of youth in Pittsburgh and he looks like he can be the guy for at least the next 3 seasons, like 24, 25, and 26. Like, if he can be the guy for those 3 years and give the Steelers time to, either draft and develop a guy, whatever works. I mean, you have to have somebody at quarterback. That's just the ultimate decider on what happens with the salary cap, because then you can start to really worry about, like, okay, what do we do about re-signing other guys? That would include Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth, maybe Jaylen Warren, because he's going to be a restricted free agent. Then you start talking about, the fifth-year option guys next year, or the fifth-year option guy, I should say. There's only one. But, yeah. Mike Jones says, I live in Philly and I've been wanting us to destroy them since that blowout game 34-3. Yeah. I'm sorry you live in Philly, man. Oh man. Yeah. Joshua Dobbs saying, I remember Ben getting pounded in Philly. It's one of the worst beatings I ever saw. I think he got sacked like 9 times. I think it was 9. And that was the year the Steelers won the Super Bowl in Tampa, the Super Bowl 43. Yeah, that was early in the season. Yeah, I think it was 9 sacks. It was 8 or 9. So, Joshua Dobbs here says, I just don't believe in Fields. It's something I can't put my finger on. Maybe it's just all the turnovers. Tomlin won't put up with that. The thing is that if Tomlin were really if Tomlin looked at Fields and looked at the 41 turnovers in 3 years and said, yeah, no, that ain't going to fly, he wouldn't be in Pittsburgh right now. So there's got to be some sort of faith that Tomlin has in either his coaching or Arthur Smith's coaching or Tom Arth's coaching, the quarterback coach. He has some sort of confidence for some reason that Fields can not be a turnover machine in Pittsburgh. Otherwise, he wouldn't be here, period. Because you're right, Tomlin does not like turning the ball over. As much as he wants to take the ball away from the other team, he definitely doesn't want to turn the ball over. He might actually not want to turn the ball over more than he wants to take it away. And that's coming from, that's a defensive-minded coach. So, Mike Jones, feel it, man. He said, I'm sorry I moved here as well. Made the move because of my family. I get it, dude. I fully get that. Doing that myself right now, but I'm at least moving to a place that I want to live in. But still, you do what you need to do for your family first and foremost, no matter where it is. I've constantly said to myself, I would never live in Houston, and I feel like God at some point is just going to be like, yeah, dude, you're going to live in Houston at some point in your life, just because you keep saying it. Oh man. Any other questions? I could probably get at least one or two, but in the meantime, I'll share with you some good news. We got an offer accepted on a house yesterday. Huge relief as we're making the move, because we obviously needed a place to live, and so that is the good news. So we're continuing to truck along. I'm going to be there for training camp. It was going to happen no matter what, but that's obviously, like I said, a huge relief. The house hunt for the time being is over. So definitely definitely excited about that. Mike Jones says Pennsylvania's cheaper than New Jersey. It is, and I was actually born and raised in New Jersey. I actually looked at, I lived in a duplex when I lived in New Jersey as a kid, and I recently looked at the estimated price of that duplex, and it's ridiculous. Thinking of the neighborhood that it's in, I'm just like, good Lord, that there's no way that I understand it's a duplex. It should not cost that amount of money. So, Barber, dude, happy birthday, man. Happy 56th, man. Big old 56. Like it. Happy birthday, Barber. Yeah, man. Good for you. Good for you. Barber asked what part of Jersey. I lived in a town. I lived in both the two towns I remember the most. From ages 3 to 6, I lived in Hackettstown, and then from 6 to 11, I lived in Boonton. It's anybody who knows, it's northern Jersey. It's around Morristown, Denville. Yeah, it's probably about 40 minutes outside the city. So yeah, that's where I was from. Mike Justice, property taxes are crazy now. I bet, man. Let's see. Joshua Dobbs here says gut reaction 41 starts next to 6 week 1. I don't know about that. I mean, Peyton Wilson would really, really, really have to completely blow everybody out of the water in training camp and preseason in order to get a starting job right away over both Elandon Roberts and Cole Holcomb, because Cole Holcomb is trending in the right direction to be able to fully participate in training camp. Not a done deal there, but he's at least trending in that direction. And Elandon Roberts, I think, is a very good fit next to Patrick Queen. I really do. So can Peyton Wilson get there? even as a rookie, yeah, the ceiling's there. I don't think you can argue with the ceiling. I don't think anybody can argue with his potential. But right away, week one, I'm not convinced that. I'm already having a hard enough time saying that both Zach Frazier and Troy Fautanu can be starting right away. Like I'm already like I don't, just because I know Tomlin doesn't want to just hand rookies the job anymore. I have a hard time believing that Fautanu, Frazier, Roman Wilson gets a job right away in the slot, even though he probably will because the Steelers need a receiver unless they make a trade, obviously. And then also Peyton Wilson, like that's 4 rookies getting a job right away. I have a hard time believing that. But could he do it as a rookie? Absolutely. But that just goes to show you the depth of that room now, which is a huge change, a much needed change for that defense. 100%. Travis asks, who do you think will have more sacks this year, TJ or Queen? TJ. TJ is going to have more sacks than anybody in the league. Queen's a good pass rusher, but he's not going to rack up. What's the most amount of sacks that he's had in a season? I mean, Queen's going to blitz. Like that's not a question. But man, the most, I mean, shoot, he has 13.5 for his career. And that's in 4 seasons. The most he's had in a season is 5. Yeah, no, the only way Patrick Queen finishes with more sacks than TJ Watt is if TJ Watt misses pretty much the entire year. So no, it'll be TJ. TJ's going to, if you have to bet on a guy to lead the league in sacks, it's going to be TJ Watt because that's what he does. That's just what he does. Skylar Strong asks, how many sacks do you think TJ will need in order to get Defensive Player of the Year? I would say he probably has to break his own, like him and Michael Strahan's record of like sacks in a season. Because other than that, that's okay. First off, that's the only time TJ's won Defensive Player of the Year is when he tied the sack record. Because if he doesn't do that year, does he win Defensive Player of the Year? I'm not convinced. I honestly think probably the voters were just like almost had their arm twisted into having to vote for him just because he tied a record, right? Because last year, virtually every actual statistic, like measurable statistic, unbiased statistic, TJ beat Myles Garrett across the board and didn't win Defensive Player of the Year because the analytics say that Myles Garrett was a better football player. And analytics are absolutely a good tool to have, but it's that same argument of pressures are more valuable than sacks. No, they're not. That pass rush win rate is more important than sacks. No, they're not. Are pressures and pass rush win rate valuable statistics for evaluating players? Absolutely. As James Harrison used to say, beat the guy in front of you. That's what pass rush win rate is telling you. It's telling you how often that defensive player beats the guy across from him on a pass rush rep. It's a valuable statistic. I'm not denying that. But is it more valuable than actually bringing the quarterback to the ground? Come on, man. The fact that it's even an argument is ridiculous. So I would say he's got to hit at least 23 sacks, which is ridiculous. And here's and Rick. Okay, Rick brings up a good point here because this is where the argument goes, and we're gonna wrap up the show here a little early today. He says a sack on first down is not as valuable as a pressure that forces an incomplete on third down. But see, here's the thing: is that the pressures that are measured aren't weighed like per down. They should be. And I would even argue that sacks on like per down need to be measured that way too. Because if a player racks up, let's say 16 sacks in a season, okay, that's a good number. Not an amazing number. Not going to lead the league, but 16 is a solid number. But if 12 of those 16 sacks are all on third down, and let's say this other guy gets 20, but only 6 of his are on third down, you might even say that those 16 sacks like almost measure a little closer to those 20 because of how many of those 16 sacks came on crucial downs. But just to blanket, to have a blanket statement that pressures mean more than sacks, that's bullcrap. That's bad. Ask another good question. Are the results of pressures even measured? Who cares if you are always getting pressure if they are always completing the pass? Actually, so the way that Pro Football Focus counts pressures is it is a combined number of an actual pressure. So like a hurry, I'll put it that way. So a hurry, a quarterback hit, and a sack. Those 3 numbers are added up, and those are the total number of pressures. So I think when some people are saying pressures over sacks, they're actually saying like hurries over sacks, which is ridiculous. You can count pressures like the total number, but to say like a quarterback hurry can be more valuable than a sack, like, come on. Not unless that hurry forced like an interception. Then you could say, okay, that was more valuable than a sack. But or like Rick mentioned earlier, that if that hurry forced an incompletion on third down and now the team has to punt it. And Joshua Dobbs, here says pretty soon we're going to need to be a math whiz to determine anything. We're really splitting hairs. But here's the thing. If we really want football analytics to take that next step, if we really, really want that, this is where football analytics needs to go, because baseball analytics are so far ahead of both football and hockey. They're so far ahead because they can measure so many different things that really value. Like if you put them all in a pie and weigh them all, equivalent, there's a nice equivalency to all of those stats, to traditional stats, to the analytics, to everything. It can give you a really good snapshot of that player's overall value. This to me is where football analytics and listen, Jerry brings up another one. All those holding non-calls hurts TJ. Same thing with Micah Parsons. I think Micah Parsons was held even more often than TJ and got less calls than TJ. Like that's where that's another part that you can throw into there is how many times was he held? But so much of football's analytical stats right now are biased. This one guy says, well, he won a rep, and the other guy says, no, he didn't win that rep. This one guy will say, oh, he was held. This other guy says he wasn't held. But if we can get to that point as a football society to where analytics can get to the point where things are measured a little bit more evenly, then I think that's where analytics can really, really become valuable. So, but as of right now, the way numbers are measured, like I said, unless you can quantify how many quarterback hurries result in interceptions, like a sack is a sack. There's no argument. There's no arguing over what a sack is. So, and yeah, it's, yeah. Slant X says holding is way out of control in the league. Well, it's an offensive league, man. That's where if they really, really clamp down on the holding and allowed the TJ Watts, the Myles Garretts, the Micah Parsons, the Nick Bosas, the Max Crosbys, all those guys, an opportunity to really, the sack record is getting obliterated. It just is. And the thing is that there's real potential that at least 3 of those 5 guys I just mentioned probably break the sack record in 1 year. It'd be like the home run chase in 1998 when Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa both break Roger Maris's record. but McGuire's the one who gets the record because he ended up with more home runs. It would just be a three-way chase probably between TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, and Micah Parsons of, okay, which one's going to end up with the most because all three are going to break the 22.5. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up today's show. Appreciate you guys. It was a good conversation today. Enjoy the weekend. When we come back on Monday, Greg McAfee, our new Steelers reporter here on DK Pittsburgh Sports, will be joining me as co-host. Really quick also to wrap things up, the following week is probably going to be an entire week without this show. Sorry. And the main reason why is because the first 2 days of that week, I will be in Arlington, Texas, covering MLB All-Star festivities, like the media availability with the players and the home run derby and the red carpet thing and the actual All-Star game itself. I will be doing that on Monday and Tuesday. And then those 3 days after that, it's going to be packing to get ready because I got to get to Pittsburgh. I got to get to Latrobe. So that's bad. Asks the 15th through the 19th. Yes. So most likely just call it my vacation, even though it's not a vacation. But as far as I know, there will at least be a Ramon show that week to help tide you over. But next week, Greg will be joining. We'll be doing that. I'm excited to have him on, and yeah, it's going to be a good time next week. The week after, it'll be dead, but it'll be that calm before the storm because that next week, man, that next week is going to be fun. Training camp, just over 2 weeks away, man. Like it's crazy. We're already getting there. So close. You guys have a good weekend. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Awesome conversation today. Catch you guys on the flippity flip. See you Monday.